You was very young when you first started acting as the part of AJ in The Sopranos. Growing up in a show is quite unique.
6 when I started acting, and then 12 when Sopranos started.
What age was you when you finished the show?
When we finished, I was about 22. Yeah, I think it was 6 or 7 seasons, but it took us about 10 years to do.
What do you think was your most challenging scene as AJ? Was it in some of the later episodes?
Uh, Definitely, yeah. I mean, probably the one that I was most nervous about was when the first time I ever had to cry as an actor was, I think, was when I like they wanted to send me off to military school or something, and I didn't want to go. So in the same scene, I had to cry and then pass out. But like, no matter how nervous you were for a scene, most of my big scenes were with James Gandolfini or Edie Falco, and then it was like as soon as you got in the scene it was like having like the greatest quarterback in the world. Like you just knew you're gonna get the perfect pass. You know, all you have to do is be there and catch the ball. You know, and so that's what I tried to do. You know,
What was it like working with James Gandolfini?
he could not have been better. He was the greatest guy off camera. He was the greatest actor on camera. He's really a special person. You know, they say like before I met him, I heard the saying like, you know, this person is larger than life, and I always thought that was just a saying. And then when you meet someone like him, you realize like, oh, this is why that saying was invented. You know, it really makes sense here.
Definitely. And what are your thoughts about the last episode?
You know, I really just know what people tell me because I never watched the show myself. So I mean, I saw the first episode of every season because we would sit at the premiere with everybody and watch it with your friends and family, and then everybody from the cast, and you know, they would invite a few thousand fans, I think, too, and everybody would kind of sit around and watch those. So those I saw, and I don't really remember a ton of it. But as far as the last episode goes, I mean, anything David Chase does to me is amazing. You know.
There's lots of theories, isn't there, and conspiracy theories about the ending.
Or from, you know, people I've never met to people in my own family to the people who I was at a friend's house when the finale was going on, and, you know, 20 people were inside watching, and I was outside with my friend, like smoking a joint, just waiting for it to happen. And I knew exactly what was going to happen. Everybody was going to come out and, you know, want to know what happened. And my answer was going to be nothing, you know?
Yeah, I think it was a good ending. But just on that, do you think if James Gandolfini was still with us, do you think there would have been a Sopranos movie?
Would there have been, you know, that's me saying if there would have been a Sopranos movie would be like somebody telling you they know what the ending is, you know?
Do you remember when you first got the part as AJ? A long time ago, but
I remember auditioning for it, and my mom was mad because I wasn't Italian, and all the other kids at the audition were Italian, or they were really trying to like play up the Italian thing, and you know, try to be from Brooklyn, or, you know, little kids with like their hair slicked back and wanting to like, and I was just this little Irish kid who, you know, I didn't know shit. I knew, you know, I loved pizza, and David loved the way that I said fuck and shit, and he liked that I spoke like an adult and not like a little kid. And then I don't remember first getting it, but I do remember being told some point after that, like people started saying, "Oh my God, you got a TV show. You're going to be famous. You know, this is it. This is the big thing." And then we went to set, and Tony Sirico on set was like, this isn't going to go anywhere. He's like, we do these all the time. We're probably never going to see each other again. And then so I had to go back and tell everybody in my family, you know, I grew up really poor, and I had to go back and tell everyone in my family, hey, we're not gonna be famous. This isn't going anywhere.
And how wrong he was. When I spoke to Vincent Pastore, he said the same thing. He said that they filmed the first two series and they went out together or something, and they weren't sure that it was going to be a huge hit, which it was, of course.
You never know with these things. I mean, I had Michael Imperioli on my podcast last week, and I said to him, like, it's gonna be, because people always ask us, did you know Sopranos was gonna be a big deal? And I asked him, like, how different is it when you do something like, because his second movie ever was Goodfellas. So his second movie ever, he got a call, a Martin Scorsese movie with Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and it's like, man, that, like, after something like that, like we thought, my family thought I was going to be famous getting a show on HBO, which had no shows at the time, or maybe just Sex and the City, and a show we had never heard of. Like, imagine your second movie ever, you get a phone call that you're doing a Scorsese movie with De Niro and Pesci. It's like, how do you sleep for days after that?
I mean, that was a great film for him, wasn't it? He had a small part, but I always remember that scene in The Sopranos where he recreates that scene, doesn't he? He shoots somebody in the foot.
See, I never watched the show. When my podcast got on YouTube, I subscribed to my podcast, and then it started sending me links to, like, Sopranos things. And I saw one thing was, like, Edie Falco, who played my mother, Carmela, was, like, sleeping in a bed with another guy. And I was like, what? Like, I never knew that on the show she slept with anybody except for Tony.
I don't think you're the only one. I think a lot of actors, they don't necessarily like to see themselves on film. Or what do you think it is?
I mean, I think it's like when you used to hear yourself on, like, somebody's answering machine, and you're like, oh, I sound like that, like, or sometimes you see pictures of yourself and you're like, oh, I don't want to see, this or whatever. And it's like, there's also sometimes, not really with Sopranos, because I still think everything they did was just so right as far as the writing goes and the directing goes, that I never saw them use the horrible take. But, like, before Sopranos, I had done commercials, and during Sopranos, I did some movies, and right before Sopranos, I did a movie, and then I did TV shows after. And sometimes, you do a scene and you go, oh man, we did 3 takes. Those first 2 I was so terrible in them. But the last one, like, I got it. And then you watch, especially with commercials, when I was doing commercials, it's like you watch what they use and you're like, oh, you're like, that's the fucking worst one that I did, and the thing is, you leave with the feeling of, like, oh, I did a good job because we finally got it. And then you're, like, it would be like, maybe if you were doing, like, a painting and you were like, oh, okay, I finally finished my painting, I love it. And then somebody bought it and put it up in their house, and you go look at it at their house, and, like, they, drew some other, or, like, they somehow got a version that you weren't finished with yet, and you're like, oh shit, that looks horrible, I can't believe. So it's like you leave filming something sometimes with a great feeling about it, and then when you watch it, you're like, oh, why did they? And it happens in commercials a lot because they want that, 5 to 10-second kind of corny, wow, like that reaction. Especially when I was doing commercials, it was almost, it was 25 years ago or something, and they wanted, like, you looking at a computer, like, holy cow, and just, like, these corny kind of, like, what now would be like, not a viral moment, but just, like, like, it's just not, there's a lot of times you see stuff you did and you're like, oh, that could have been a lot better.
That's great. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Robert.
Thank you so much for having me.